Hey y'all, my name's Helen, and you're listening to the Sincere Practice Podcast. Today's episode structure is a little different. I'm just talking to you with just me, no podcast setup, no fancy camera, just my iPhone. And today I want to talk to you and just have a casual conversation about the struggles and challenges I've had to face personal development as a therapist. I think that this video is something that needs to be out there in the world because I don't think that we talk about the necessity for personal development as a therapist in the world. There are so many things that I've had to learn throughout my career. The ability to admit when you're wrong, the ability to grow and heal from a relationship, the ability to be a lifelong learner, humility. When I first started out as a therapist, I was probably 23, 22 years old. I was young. I didn't know anything about the world. I probably did, but not as much as I know now. And I've worked for hundreds of clients, worked in a couple of different mental health settings. I worked in the school system as an intern, community mental health. I worked in hospice as an intern, and now I work in private practice. I own a business called Sincere Practice, the podcast and the video that you're listening to now. And I just want to provide the wisdom that I wish I had as a 22-year-old kid. But essentially, when you first start out as a therapist, you have this bright eyed, bushy tailed pressure to please the person that you're in front of. And as I've begun to be in this work, I've learned that some of the most relieving things that you can do for your clients is just letting them have the space to own their story, to talk about it, to reflect about it without the need to fix it or to make it go away. I think very early in my career, in my early 20s, I've had to learn the value of not fixing it for the client. A lot of the times in grad school, you're taught to not work more than your client. Now, what do I mean by that? Oftentimes, when people are in the healing process, they go through the different stages of change. The different stages of change is the awareness of the problem, sometimes the lack of awareness of a problem, and helping the client get to the awareness on their own, as opposed to being quick to share the end of the story. I think the beauty and analogy that I've learned throughout my career is that you have to be in and with the client on their journey. It's their path, and it's not your job to make the problem go away. Now, there are a couple of ethical concerns, right? It's important to find the best and more appropriate care for them. So when you're an associate, just breaking it down, you're under the mentorship or the tutelage of your supervisor. You're supposed to gain 3,000 hours if you live in the state of California in order to qualify for those things. And then you have to take classes, sexual health classes, ethics classes, HIPAA, telehealth courses classes, in order to get to the point where you have the basic structures down, how to report safety, how to report child abuse, etc. I think that sometimes when you're a young therapist, at least this is how I felt, the thought of helping someone through suicide, the thought of helping someone through addiction, the thought of helping someone through issues that felt so big, felt really overwhelming to me at the time. And what I know now is that you have to learn the right protocols. Sometimes the gap is what you don't know, and having enough humility to say, hey, can you help me with this? My favorite thing about the work that I get to do as a therapist is that you're taught to constantly seek consultation. You're taught to always ask for help. I was reading Proverbs 18 today, and it talked about how a fool just wants to hear their own opinion, but the wise actively seeks knowledge. And in the career of a therapist, you constantly have to seek knowledge, especially in moments where you don't know what to do. You're encouraged to talk to colleagues, to talk to other therapists in order to get the best help for the client. And more importantly, you want to get to the point where you can say that you're giving the best type of care to the person under your care. I also want to talk about the realm of self-development. Early in my 20s, I started to feel this guilt of not being the person that I wanted to be. And I wanted to set an example for my clients. I wanted to walk the walk. I wanted to be the person that was able to live what they spoke. I'm not saying that a therapist should be perfect. We all make mistakes. This is not about perfection by any means. What I'm talking about is the fact that character leaks. I used to go to Shepherd Church growing up, and one of my youth pastors, Pastor Dusty, always used to say that character leaks. Who you are, the embodiment of who you are, will come out in different areas of your life. And that stuck with me as a teenager. And that's something that I want to embody in every one of my sessions, that when someone speaks with me, I really want to take the time to learn from them in the same way that they're learning from me. I want to be able to say at the end of every session that I gave it my best, that I showed up in my best. One of my favorite artists, Tom Sachs, he has this article called The 10 Bullets. And in the 10 bullets are the 10 requirements he has for his employees. Be fed, show up on time, if not earlier than on time, be prepared, and do the work. Do it to the best of your ability. And it sets a really high standard. It sets a really high bar for someone first starting out in the therapy practice. But I think if I were to go back in time to 7 years ago, to when I was a young upcoming graduate, I would say that evaluation is so necessary to mastery. You need accountability. You need people in your life who are willing to speak wisdom and correction and to tell you when you're wrong and when you need to give the person the best type of care. As I continue this work, as I've become licensed, gone from associate social worker to licensed social worker, I've learned the deep importance of being hungry to learn, hungry to serve with meekness, with a sense of calm. When people talk about the word meek, they often talk about being mild-mannered, but meekness actually comes from an inner calm, an introvertedness that is just humble to receive and to learn from other folks, not quick to be loud. And the positionality that I've learned to take as a therapist has been such a spiritual and personal growing process because it's taught me to really look at myself. I personally believe that being a therapist, you can't be sustained in this work if you don't take the time to really look at yourself, to look at what you're bringing into the room in terms of your character, how you respond, the things that you do. The work that I get to do is very relational. It requires a deeper insight in order to grow as an individual, in order to master the skills that you were trained to do. By skills, I mean the ability to discern what stage of change someone is in. Are they in awareness? Are they ready to change? Are they relapsing from change? Do they want to hear advice? Do they not? That takes discernment, and that takes the willingness to listen, to step back, and to go, is this person ready to receive? The second skill that's required to be a really great therapist is the ability to speak wisdom when someone is ready to hear that wisdom. Sometimes someone just wants to vent. Sometimes someone is in a position to hear correction. And sometimes someone is in so much pain that they are not ready to even receive any input from you. And that takes practice, that takes hours of deliberation and accountability and working it through. You need to be able to get to know a client in that process. The third skill that's necessary is skill acquisition, being hungry to go, what population am I serving? And how can I give them the best and most appropriate care? At the time of this recording, it's March 18th, 2026, and I'm currently reading a book on business. I'm taking a class on maternal mental health, and I just started a class on faith-based couples counseling. Now, someone might be listening to this and have a very right reaction, rightly so, that sounds like too much. But my brain is wired and hungry to learn actively, to actively grow. And in moments of great struggle and transition, like starting a business, like starting a private practice, it requires a deep insight into what's lacking and what needs growth enough to serve others. I've told clients this and I've told friends this. Making money is great, but I really do believe that therapy for me is a calling, that I've been called to do this job. And in order for me to do it well, I need to steward the gifts that I've been given and to develop skills and mastery to do so. At the beginning of my work when I was 22, I wrote down all of the things that I was good at. I was curious, I was hungry to learn, and I could show up. But those three skills on their own were not enough to guide a client through depression, grief, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, postpartum. I needed to gain the proper skills with humility, with meekness, with eagerness to take those classes, to read those books. And so I'm actively learning about business, about postpartum, about couples counseling, because I want to be able to serve women in the best way, to show up in the best way that I can. And I really do believe that faith in what we do requires action that follows it, right? In the book of James, it says, faith without works is dead. We need our actions to follow through with what we say we believe. And yes, it is a really hard thing to follow up with, but it keeps us going. Having an honest, reflective understanding of who you are is probably one of my favorite things about doing this work. So thanks y'all for listening to this behind the scenes episode on the struggles and challenges of being a therapist. I hope this was helpful to you. Leave a note in the comments to just request what videos you'd like next and what you'd like more of, and I'll see you next time.